Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. Hope you're doing well at home and are having a nice weekend today. It's just me and Dukes, the dream team, back on your
duo.
screens. How are you doing, Dukes?
Yeah, good, thank you. We did ask Joe, we did ask Sam, we asked Belinda, we asked Harriet, who works on Sky Sports News, but unfortunately no one was available. But I think we've got a really good show lined up. I'm really excited about this contest, this whole conversation. I think is going to be pretty epic, so stay tuned. I think it's a good one. How are you there, Mikey?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Dukes. Good, thanks. I echo your thoughts. Let's face it, the January transfer window is yet to truly deliver. Who knows?
Everyone's counting the pennies.
Everyone's counting their pennies. Points deductions potentially for Everton and Nottingham Forest. It's all a bit depressing, really. It truly is. A proper blue January. But so we thought that in the absence of any really juicy stuff going on, the absence of any real meaty rumours, hopefully, the transfer news will pick up in the next 7 days. Maybe it will have by the time you're watching this. But we thought we would go down the more historic route and set ourselves a challenge. It's the January signings draft challenge. Now,
big one.
If you haven't seen this, I think we probably did something like this maybe a year ago, or maybe even 2 years ago, to be honest, on Sunday Vibes, a draft challenge. Basically, myself and Dukes will take it in turns to build a team of the best January signings ever, but we are not allowed to pick the same players. So we have to be quite tactical about which positions we go for first, which positions we're prioritising, what our backups are in each position if we don't get our number one choice. And then you guys at home can decide in the comments who has got the better team. We'll get them up on screen as we go as well as we're building them. Should be a good one. So without further ado, Dukes, I think you're up first.
Okay.
Who are you going for first?
It is a really difficult one. I think there's 3 ones in the Premier League that at least stand out. And I don't think there's as much depth in this position as other positions.
Okay.
So I'm actually going to go for Bruno Fernandes, Benfica to Man United.
Okay.
Now,
Sporting CP to Man United.
Sorry, Sporting CP.
Already made that mistake.
How on earth did I mess that up? Anyway, Sporting CP to Man United. Yeah, huge error there from me. Brilliant at Sporting, was linked with a move to Spurs. Man United got him. And despite the current discourse that he needs to be sold, that he needs to be moved on,
where is that coming from?
I think it comes from certain creators on Twitter who I do really enjoy following, but I just don't understand the logic of it. I think Man United without Bruno over the last few years is a pretty disastrous place to be. Obviously, he did cost a considerable amount of money. A lot of people thought it was slightly risky at the time, despite his form for Sporting, given the fact he'd had to change positions a few times in the past, that he had a couple of injuries early on in his career, but he's barely missed a game since. And for a £47 million signing, I think he's probably been the best Man United signing post-Fergie.
Definitely.
I think he's been really, really solid. I mean, 70 goals and 59 assists in 213 games for Man United. That's 0.6 goals and assists per game. His goal return per season has gone 12, 28, which was exceptional.
Wow.
10, 14. He's on 6 this year, which is a bit of a lower return, but Man United have been a bit of a mess, particularly poor going forward. But his chance creation levels and his expected assists are still extremely high. He's in the top 1% of midfielders for non-penalty XG and expected assists per 90. So everyone just saying he's Fernandes. It's just not factually accurate. This guy is a serial chance creator. I think he could play for any side in the world. I think he would pretty much improve any side in the world as well. And I just don't understand why he's not given more appreciation by Man United fans. I think it just, having played there for a while and for Man United to have been pretty poor, pretty disastrously poor for most of his time there, lots of people just associate that, it must be the best player is not good enough. When actually I think it's the floor of the team is not good enough to match him and potentially Rashford when he's fully fit and on form level as well. It's not really the ceiling players. To build a house, you build it from the foundations up. And I just think Man United have too many players that have drifted in that side, and too many players that should have been sold a long time ago that they haven't. So I think he's been absolutely exceptional. Even this year, 2.5 shots, 2.8 key passes per 90. He makes things happen. Yes, he loses the ball in dangerous areas. Yes, he can be found wanting almost through trying too hard at times.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of a January signing, given the period that he's been at Man United, I don't think it could have gone much better for him. So he's my first pick.
Yeah, fair enough, Dukes. He was also my number one pick, so I'll have to go for one of my alternatives.
Down the right route.
Yeah, I agree, Dukes. I think Bruno Fernandes it's easy. He's an easy player to give stick because his level is normally very high, but when United, in poor games for Man United, he does sometimes go missing, and there's a lot of talk about him not being the ideal captain and body language, etc., and being a bit petulant. But the fact of the matter is, Man United have qualified for the Champions League three times since Bruno Fernandes was signed, and if he hadn't been signed, I guarantee United would not have qualified for the Champions League in any of those seasons. I think the importance of that signing to United's recent history is I think a bit underappreciated. I agree with you, Dukes. I'm going to go in a position which I found quite tough to fill as well, or at least I didn't have much depth there, and bit of a rogue chat, so I'm going for a 4-3-3. I don't know what you've gone for.
I think we should clarify 4-3-3.
I mean, to be fair, like if other of us are really struggling, we can change formations in order to make it work a bit more. But
I might have to drop a 10 in at some stage.
Okay, a 10. So what? So when you say a 10, as in
like, a player 4-3-1-2.
Okay, right, yeah, fair enough. Would Bruno Fernandes be that 10 if you were to do that? Okay, interesting. Okay, we'll
I struggled in one area of the forward line, but we'll get there in due course. Okay.
So I was struggling a bit at left wing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've gone for someone. I'm building this up a bit tactically here, and I am getting a big hitter in there early. Luis Suarez on the left wing. Why not?
A
front three. I'm putting Luis Suarez there just because I've got a lot of centre forwards, right? Or I've got a few centre forwards. The drop off between Luis Suarez, my only other pick on the left wing was Luis Diaz, and Luis Suarez did play on the left at Liverpool at times. Yeah, I think it's justified.
But this is his move to.
This is his move to Liverpool. Sorry, yeah, this is his move to Liverpool. January 2011, 26.5 million euros from Ajax. He ended up going for 82 million just 3 years later to Barcelona. 31 goals and 12 assists in that final Premier League campaign. I mean, the impact that he had at Liverpool was really, really astounding. And also, the profit that they made on him, was then set them up well for what was the Jurgen Klopp era. Jurgen Klopp only arrived at Liverpool just over a year after Luis Suarez left. It feels like in hindsight that there was a long gap between those two, but actually Luis Suarez leaving and the end of the Rodgers era was actually
shows how long Klopp's been there as well.
Yeah, exactly. 2016. So yeah, end of 2015. And I think the instant impact that he had there, and then that season, long, well documented as one of the greatest individual seasons in Premier League history, and also just the player that Luis Suarez, continues to be. I was looking at his Gremio stats from last season. I think it was like 17 goals and 11 assists in the league for Gremio last year. Like he has
saying that he's finding it really difficult to get. Did you see those quotes? He's finding it really difficult to get out of bed every morning.
Yeah,
can't play football with his son in the garden. It's really quite sad in a way.
Yeah, I guess he is 36, 37 like that, now,
yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty mad, and it just goes to show how high his footballing IQ has remained. Even what was it in the 21-22 season, scored 21 goals for Atletico Madrid. So yeah, what a remarkable
that was
striker.
A great transfer as well. I love
brilliant,
that transfer.
Brilliant. So did they get him on? Was it on a free that Atleti got him on?
Yeah, it was some ridiculous deal, wasn't it? And then they won the league in Barcelona. So yeah, it was a disaster for Barcelona.
Yeah, pretty bad stuff. But yeah, I just think 26.5 million euros for someone who would quite soon become one of the greatest forwards of all time. It is pretty crazy stuff, and also the fact that it happened in the same week that they got Andy Carroll through the door for more money. Just the comedy of that is just brilliant. And yeah, the fact that they sold Torres, got Suarez in for half that price as well. Yeah, just everything about that transfer I think is great. I know it's a bit of a bait one, but wanted to get that out of there early because I felt like my left wing position could have become a little bit hairy later down the line. Loves Luis Diaz, and I think if he stayed injury free in that 22-23 season, we'd be looking at a player who very much one of the best in the Premier League, if not one of the best wingers in Europe at this moment in time. But I think that injury did impact Luis Diaz, didn't it? And I think he's still kind of trying to get back to his best form on a consistent basis. So yeah, that's my left wing position sorted. Where are you going next, Dukes?
I am going for the striker that Bruno Fernandes will be feeding. And I'm going for Erling Haaland at Dortmund. From RB Salzburg, joined in January 2020.
Sorry, I thought when you said Bruno Fernandes will be feeding, I was like, what transfer have you got? Like,
no.
Okay, yeah.
No,
nice.
Haaland up top as number 9 in a Dortmund shirt, joined from RB Salzburg in that January. Man United wanted him. I think Juventus were close to him as well, but chose Dortmund, and what a move it proved to be for his career. I mean, his numbers there are just insane. 86 goals in 89 games for the club.
Mad.
And he missed a lot of games there with injury, as people are now talking about, because last year was one of his only sort of really injury-free hit years, and what a difference it made, 50 goals. I mean, but, at Dortmund, he arrived and there had been a certain amount of turnover of players. They consistently sold their best players for a number of years, Aubameyang, Pulisic, etc. But him, Sancho, Bellingham sort of really put Dortmund... It was one of the funnest Dortmund teams I've watched as well, and... Given that record for a club of Dortmund's calibre, and that's no disrespect to Dortmund, but those are the sort of numbers you put up at a true super club that is winning the league every year. So to do it at a challenger who never got over the line in his time there.
And a great record in the Champions League.
And a great record in the Champions League as well. And only, 15 and 13 European games for them as well. Only won the DFB Pokal Cup there, but then was sold for 60 million euros. Obviously, they could have sold him for far, far more, but there was that release clause in his contract. But it couldn't have really gone better, that move, to be honest. No. Yes, he could have won a league title there, but he did everything possible. And I think the concept of Bruno Fernandes and Haaland in the same team was a great start to my draft. So, yeah, that's my second spot.
I like that. He was also obviously my first choice at centre forward, so I'll have to go for one of my backups there.
Same wavelength.
We are on the same wavelength here. I feel like it might get a bit more interesting further down the line. I'm just wondering whether to go for another big hitter, or do I go for...
Cover yourself at the back, maybe.
I think I might cover myself at the back. I mean, there's a lot of good options at the back. There are a lot of good options at the back, so I'm actually going to leave centre-back for now.
Okay.
I know some people might be screaming at home because there are a couple of Premier League picks, but I'm actually going to go for goalkeeper here.
Right.
I want to cover myself. Me and Dukes were talking about this before. In general, goalkeepers...
They don't move in January.
They don't move in January. They don't move in January. They don't get substituted mid-game unless you're Mikel Arteta or in his dream future, and they don't get sold in January. I mean, I guess it's not too big a surprise, but equally, I just would have thought that there would have been more times that clubs were crying out for some cover at goalkeeper in January. Doesn't seem to be the case. In terms of Premier League ones, pretty much Martin Dubravka's the only kind of real starting goalkeeper who's kind of moved in recent years. And to be fair, that was a really good pickup by Newcastle. Look at the job he's doing in place of Nick Pope at the moment. He's doing absolutely fine. Once again, has had his hairy moments, but I actually stumbled across this in my research. I was not looking for a goalkeeper necessarily, but I was looking at Lyon in the 2000s, because I thought surely they, great team in the 2000s, surely they got a good deal during that time. Turns out most of their business was in the summer, so they didn't really make many signings there. But
Jean-Michel being organised.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very organised man. But in the late 90s, they were looking for a new goalkeeper. Who would go on to win all those titles? It was Gregory Coupé in January of 1997. They signed him for 1.4 million euros, maybe slightly adjusted for inflation. I'm not so sure. From Saint Etienne. I don't know whether they were looking for a starter back then or whether they were looking just for cover or for someone to split minutes in goal at the time. But yeah, I mean, I guess it was in the kind of building stage of that Lyon side. They were yet to truly mark themselves out as the force in French football, about 4 or 5 years before their first title. But yeah, Gregory Coupé through the door, very quickly became their number one, and ended up making 541 appearances for them before leaving in 2008, which was the last time that they won the title.
Coincidence? Probably not.
Probably not. I mean, that season as well, actually, that 2007-8 season, he was out for half a year with injury. And so I think, and he wasn't getting any younger, so I think it kind of felt like the time to move on. But I think they ended up actually selling him for a small profit, although at the same time, 10 after a decade, does that really count, with inflation and everything? But 7 consecutive titles between 2001-2 and 2007-8. He was also part of, the France squads in that time, part of the France squad that made the World Cup final in 2006. What a career at Lyon that guy had. I couldn't really think of anyone. Well, I couldn't find anyone better than that in the goalkeeper position. Like we were saying, it's pretty slim pickings down there. So I guess if you haven't. If that wasn't your first pick, Dougie, then you can probably save goalkeeper.
Yeah, I'll save goalkeeper. I wasn't on those lines. I'll save goalkeeper for,
okay,
for due course.
Interesting.
I found it's quite a niche one, but I actually really like it. Next up, I will go to left back.
Okay.
I assume as a Man United fan, you've got the option of a couple of Man United all-time great defenders to go for. But I actually want to go for Alphonso Davies.
Ooh, okay. Nice.
Vancouver Whitecaps to Bayern in January 2019, 14 million euros. Obviously signed as a left winger, signed as a really exciting left winger, but converted by Niko Kovac initially into a left back in the 1920 season, because I'd actually forgotten it was because Luca Hernandez and Nicolas Sula were out with long-term injuries at the same time, so they wanted to move David Alaba into centre back,
yes,
and they needed a new left back. And Alphonso Davies just instantly looked absolutely exceptional.
It was like he was the best left back in the world
from the get-go.
Yeah.
And yes, he did maybe have a slight dip. Was it last season? But I just think, in terms of an all-round left back, there's almost no one really like him. I think he's been absolutely exceptional. And in that 1920 season, they obviously go on and win the treble. They had a really tough Champions League run as well. They beat Frankfurt. They beat Leverkusen in the DFB Pokal. I think they only dropped points in one of their final 19 games that season as well.
Crazy.
From about December time, because they were quite bad under Kovac. Then Hansi Flick took over, and they were just absolutely exceptional. And everyone thought that Hansi Flick was the Messiah. It hasn't proven to be the case, but some of those players...
He was for that season, though.
He was for that season.
Thomas Müller did that with Alphonso Davies. I can't remember who was filling out right back at the time as well. Was Kimmich having to come back into... Or maybe Pavard was back by that point.
I think Pavard was back, and I think that's when the Kimmich-Goretzka duo just really took on to a new level. But yeah, they were absolutely frighteningly good that year. And Alphonso Davies has been, when fit, I think, the outstanding probably all-round left-back in the world. I think Theo Hernandez is probably a better attacking threat these days, and has actually filled out pretty well at centre-back in the last couple of months as well. But yeah, Alphonso Davies, I think with Andy Robertson taking a dip in the last few years, understandably after so many years being one of the first choices in that team sheet, one of the first choices in the position in the world. It's not the deepest position in the world either, but I think people underestimate how good Alphonso Davies' passing is, which is really not what a winger is supposed to be exceptionally good at coming through. And he's obviously got incredible speed, saves him from so many situations, but you rarely see any goals that are really Alphonso Davies' mistakes. Yeah. He's just incredibly calm in possession. He picks up the right moments to attack. He's a good all-round attacking threat as well. Great presser, great energy. I think he's been phenomenal for Bayern. And, if he goes to Bayern Munich, if he goes to Real Madrid this summer, which is being heavily talked about, I think that's a really, really exciting signing for a club that signed Bellingham last summer, Davies this summer, potentially Mbappe. Real Madrid in the next 5-6 years, it's just potentially quite terrifying.
Sickening. Can you imagine Alphonso Davies, Bellingham, Camavinga
reunited with
team.
Alaba, Militao? They're looking at potentially a right back
Vinicius
in the next couple of years.
Alphonso Davies down the left.
It's a nightmare for any La Liga coach, anyone in Europe actually. He's my left back choice.
Okay. Nice. I think that's really strong. He was one of my backups actually. I'm gonna get onto left back in a little bit, but you actually haven't picked my number one. You might be surprised who my number one is actually. Actually, you might not be so surprised, but if you're talking about Man United, it's not necessarily a Man United player at left back. I'm gonna go for another big hitter then. Where am I going next? You know what? Actually, I might regret this, but I'm going to go to my central midfielder, not my attacking midfielder. Sure. So I'm going for a bit of a 4-3-3 with a DM, an 8, and a 10. I'm going to go for my 8 because I think my 8 is my favourite pick in the whole team potentially. Not necessarily he is one of the best players actually in here, and I think the deal is just so good. And
that is a good thing to mention. Actually, we're not just going for for a player's ability, it can be a very good inclusion for a good deal.
Yeah.
I think so far I've only mentioned players that were very good, players for the clubs, but I think good deals is quite important.
Yeah, good deals are important, and kind of what they meant for the club and everything. And I think at centre back there are some big ones. There are also some really good bargains in there as well. So I'm going for my central midfielder, Wesley Sneijder, to Galatasaray.
Wow, love
2013, January
my
2013.
Doppelganger, some say.
Exactly, yeah. Just a tribute to you, Dukes. But 7.5 million euros from Inter to Galatasaray, January 2013. In fact, the same January that they signed Didier Drogba.
That was a great
when Galatasaray really were kind of pushing those kind of Hollywood heights in terms of who they were getting in. It's easy to forget just actually how big an impact he had at Galatasaray, and how, this was Wesley Sneijder at 28 years old. And I do remember it vividly. He kind of went from, being one of the best, widely considered one of the best players in the world in kind of 2010. Obviously won the treble with Inter, dragged the Netherlands along with, I think, Arjen Robben. Actually, no, sorry, Arjen Robben was more 2014 when he had the big impact for the Netherlands. Dragged the Netherlands to the 2010 World Cup final. And obviously famously missed out on the podium of the Ballon d'Or.
One of the biggest robberies.
Big old robbery, but only 2 years later, there was so much talk about him being past it. He was having injury problems, wasn't he, in his final year or two at Inter. Inter in general just dropped off, didn't they, post Mourinho? They just became an absolute shambles. So this was such a what an amazing price for Galatasaray to get Sneijder, and even though this is over 10 years ago now, 7.5 million euros for a player of Sneijder's standing. And in my research, I kind of forgot that Chelsea were interested in him, Liverpool were interested in him, and okay, it wasn't the Liverpool of now, it was the Liverpool of 2013.
Was that instead of Coutinho? It must have been, I suppose.
I guess it would have been. And Coutinho, another a name who might come up in this conversation as well later down the line. But Wesley Sneijder was keen apparently to go to Galatasaray because he wanted to become a club legend there, and he felt that a move to the Premier League perhaps didn't afford him that kind of opportunity. He really wanted to make his mark as a club and challenge for titles, and that he did. He won 2 league titles, 3 Turkish Cups, 3 Turkish Super Cups. This was also a time when Galatasaray were a force in the Champions League. They came up against Real Madrid in the quarterfinals of the Champions League that very same year that he signed, and they lost 3-0 away, but then came back to win 3-2 at home. Obviously on aggregate still lost, but he drove that. I think he scored the opener in that game, if I'm not wrong. Just so many memorable moments. He had a screamer in him. He was great from set pieces. Ended his career at Gala with 45 goals in 175 appearances, got 15 assists in his final season. And during this time as well was when, the kind of financial problems at Galatasaray were coming to the fore as well. They withheld his wages. I think they withheld something like 1 million euros of his wages at one point. They fined him 2 million euros once for getting too many yellow cards in a season. And so there was a point where the Gala hierarchy were kind of trying to get rid of him to balance the books, and so even amid those disputes, within the club and the bad blood that existed there, Sneijder still performed on the pitch, and just became a club legend. Probably one of the most gifted players to play there, and I think in his second season they even got through the Champions League group ahead of Juventus. I think he scored the winner against Juventus in the game that got them through. So and that was a seriously good Juventus team. That was Antonio Conte era Juve. So I think the impact that he had at Galatasaray, although you could argue that in the long term, what he represented at Galatasaray ended up with them getting into those kind of financial problems, but on the pitch, I think it's hard to argue there. I couldn't find many other. I know he's an attacking 8, but generally speaking, I couldn't find many other 8s who were quite on that level of Schneider. Edgar Davids was one of my backups going to Juve. Mikel Arteta was in there as well. I don't know whether you had anyone else, Dukes, but yeah, Wesley Schneider.
Love that. What a player. What an absolute legend. Okay, I'm going to go back to my forward line now.
Okay.
I've got Haaland in the middle, and I think left winger, as you say, is quite difficult. I thought about playing Bobby Firmino out there for his transfer to Hoffenheim. Not ideal. But he was going to be
and you were having a go at me about Big Suarez on the left.
It's Garth Crooks, okay. He was going to be my sort of... You know how I mentioned a number 10 behind two forwards? He was going to be my potential.
I didn't realise he went to Hoffenheim in January.
Yeah, I mean, for like peanuts.
Yeah. And he was great.
He was brilliant at Hoffenheim. Slowish start, and then I think his second full year, I think he scored 16 league goals, one of the top scorers in the Bundesliga, won Breakthrough Player of the Year, which is a really nice award that they should probably do in the Premier League. Anyway, was brilliant there. But actually, I found more of a natural left winger. And I've gone with Memphis Depay from Man United to Lyon.
Nice.
I really liked Memphis Depay at Lyon. I mean, as anyone that watched Football Daily in that period could tell, we really liked him at Lyon. I think he was our recommended how to fix on the left wing for anyone.
Milan
really.
In particular, I think
Milan
very pushy.
Honestly, it must have been 4 transfer windows in a row. Yeah. It was just relentless. But yeah, struggled at Man United, obviously. 7 goals in 53 games there. Was a sort of victim of Louis van Gaal's football in many ways, had a few injury issues. There were some supposed commitment issues and attitude problems. So much, whatever. I mean, it's a well-trodden story. But in January 2017, he joins Lyon for just £17 million. Initially, his record there, 76 goals and 55 assists in 178 games for the club.
So good.
In his final year, it's almost like Juan Mata in his 12-13 season at Chelsea, which is like one of those forgotten campaigns. But his final year at Lyon, get this, 22 goals and 12 assists in 40 games in all competitions for Lyon.
Outrageous.
Unreal. And that was the year, I think, that maybe that was the year before, but they reached the Champions League semi-finals, then lost to that Bayern side that went on, as I said earlier, to win the treble. But Memphis Depay at Lyon, free kicks, long ranges, creativity, bravado, charisma. He honestly had it all.
The lion.
Yeah, he was. I mean, for someone with such a big ego, it was the first time in his career that he really backed it up at a big club, or at a club bigger than PSV anyway. I mean, he was playing exceptionally well for the Netherlands in that time as well. And yeah, he moved to Barcelona on the back of that form there. Didn't really do it that well at Barcelona. He struggled for fitness really at Atleti. I think he still had some great moments there. But yeah, for a player that I think he's still only 29, which is absolutely crazy when you think about it. But yeah, Memphis Depay at Lyon was phenomenal and so consistent, and I thought was a good fit for left wing. So I've got Haaland in the middle, Depay in front of Bruno Fernandes, and who is the other player I've got already in? Oh, Alphonso Davies at left back.
So you got a strong left side there.
Got a strong left side.
Nice shout. I was considering Memphis across the forward line. To be honest, I was kind of considering Memphis. Yeah, I do really like that shout. Okay, I've got to go to centre back now. I've got to take Virgil van Dijk. I've got to do it. I'm going to take that. I'm going to take him.
3-pointer.
Yeah, I mean,
he is a difference maker.
Probably the best January signing in Premier League history, given what he's achieved at Liverpool now. I know he was very expensive, but he has more than paid that back.
Just a little.
And also I think the fact that, I know it gets talked about too much now, but the fact that Harry Maguire 18 months later went to Man United for more money, I think, in the minds of many fans, makes that seem cheap now, what Van Dijk went for in 2018.
He hadn't played that many games for Southampton. I think he had one injury-free year and then one quite injury-affected year. But yeah, I mean, what a signing that's proven to be.
Yeah, and it was, it was a bit of a gamble. He hadn't played at a Champions League level club. I mean, he'd not even. Well, he had played at a Champions League level club. He played at Celtic, yeah. But yeah, it was a lot of money to put up for a player playing at Southampton, and especially the fact that there was that bad blood between Southampton and Liverpool from the summer of 2018, where they kind of tried to tap him up. The fact that Michael Edwards and Jurgen Klopp were willing to go that extra bit, they were willing to persist with Van Dijk. They were so convinced of him and were willing to put out that kind of money, obviously assisted by the Philippe Coutinho sale to Barcelona as well. Yeah, I think it is one of the best pieces of transfer business in Premier League history. Instantaneously had an effect there, didn't he? I think he scored the winner against Everton in the FA Cup on his debut in the last minute. And then from there, helped them on the way to that Champions League final, helped them gain Champions League football that season as well. And it took Alisson coming in that summer to fix the final problem that Klopp had, but Klopp did have defensive issues before Van Dijk came in, so some quite major defensive issues, especially defending from set pieces. And Van Dijk was able to not only sort those out, but also give, Jurgen Klopp, at the time, the best ball-playing centre-back in world football. Maybe still the best ball-playing centre-back in world football.
I was going to say, because I'm obviously going to mention if I could, I should say.
Yeah.
But I think his passing's really underrated.
Yeah.
Really underrated. People always just talk about how unruffled he looks and his reading of the game and his recovery pace, but I actually think his passing
good. I mean, his long-range passing, his looping balls into the final third are, I think I remember that one that set up, I mean, it was an amazing finish from Sadio Mane, but that one that set up Sadio Mane, I think it was against Bayern.
Out.
Yeah, it was, oh my God.
And they won the Champions League that year.
Was that the same year they won?
2018-19. Yeah.
And then 2018-19 was also the year that he was not dribbled past once throughout the entire season. And I think this season he is yet to be dribbled past as well. So he is rolling back the years a bit this season. And I know like last year was a down year for him, but
first 6 months, I think he finished quite well.
He finished well, yeah. The first 6 months was particularly poor, and then Liverpool did pick up in general, didn't they? But aside from that, Van Dijk has been basically flawless at Liverpool. What a player he is.
That's a good one.
So I mean, there are lots of good centre back options knocking about. Are you going to go there? Or are you going to go somewhere else?
Yeah, why not? You
don't have to.
No, I think now is the time.
Okay.
Now is time. I think I basically had a few shouts that I wanted to mention in this area. Actually, I don't want to, because I might take up some of yours. If you're going for Van Dijk, I want Nemanja Vidic.
Okay.
I think it's a tap-in, obviously.
Yeah. What a pairing they would be, though.
What a pairing they would be, I know. Opposing teams. But Vidic had been chased by Man United for 2.5 years prior to signing. And he actually hadn't played that many games for Spartak Moscow beforehand. And I hadn't realised until doing research today that Fiorentina had a transfer agreed with him. And they'd filled up their non-EU quota, or they basically couldn't get any more non-Italian players into their quota.
Mad.
So Man United hijacked the deal at the last minute. And what a signing it proved to be.
I think it was secured on like Christmas Day or something ridiculous,
something mad like that.
Christmas Eve. I think that's when it was agreed.
And it was January 2006, and he didn't really play that much in his first 6 months.
He looked really bad originally as well.
Yeah.
I think I remember watching him in. I think when United lost to Liverpool in the FA Cup, Peter Crouch scored the winner in that game. So that's a blast from the past. In fact, it's the same game in which Alan Smith broke his leg from Reese's free kick. If anyone remembers that's really a blast from the past at this point. But very much a blast from the past, literally. But I think Vidic actually started that game, or at least came on and really, really struggled.
Dodgy first 6 months. Actually, I think they won the League Cup that year, and he gave his medal to Giuseppe Rossi because he thought he didn't deserve it. Like, that was where he was at, really. I mean, the League Cup finals in February, so he'd only just arrived. Yeah. But either way, didn't really feature that much. But then at the start of the next season, so 2006-07, him and Ferdinand locked down that partnership, and for the next 3 years, it's in the conversation with the PK Puyols of the last, and Pepe and whoever you want to pair him, or Pepe and Ramos probably, as the best centre-back pairing of probably the 21st century, and maybe Chiellini, Barzagli, Bonucci as well. But it deserves to be in that pecking order of centre-back pairings.
Terry Carvalho as well,
Terry
maybe.
Carvalho, of course, yeah. But that three-peat, the Champions League final in 2008 as well. The run, I think the following year in 2008-9 of 14 consecutive clean sheets in the Premier League. That's a record that I think won't really be broken who knows, but it doesn't feel like it's going to be broken. Like that Chelsea 2004-05 defensive record season, I can't see that being broken. 14 clean sheets in a row is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's crazy.
He was just an absolute monster in that season, particularly in 2008-09. So that's Ronaldo's final year at Man United, and Vidic is nominated for PFA Player of the Year. They actually ended up giving it to Giggs in that weird period where everyone started giving Giggs awards because he's been there for 20 years. Like, he was never really
Sports Personality of the Year.
Yeah, he won Sports Person. I mean, it hasn't aged well, obviously, for obvious reasons. But yeah, Vidic doesn't win PFA Player of the Year in 2008-9, but wins Man United Players Player of the Year and Man United Fans Player of the Year at the end of a three-peat. He then wins another 2 Premier League titles. I think only Roy Keane, Dennis Irwin and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer have won more Premier League titles for players not born in the UK or Wales.
Interesting.
So he is right up there in Premier League legends. And whenever he gets mentioned on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, everyone's like, oh, Fernando Torres gave him nightmares. Fernando Torres at that time was one of the best strikers in the world.
Maybe the best striker in the world.
And absolutely destroyed Man United on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
Like, there's no real embarrassment there. And yes, maybe he wasn't as smooth as some other defenders, but if you wanted someone to match anyone physically in world football at that time, and there were some absolute monsters around at that time, like physical strikers that can do everything, you know, the likes of Zlatan, etc., I would want Vidic in my team.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think he is the perfect first centre-back to have as my pairing.
Nice. Very strong choice. Very strong choice. He would have been my partner for Van Dijk, but I'll take that. Yeah, I think it's notable that Fernando Torres was the only striker who ever really gave him nightmares. That was what was notable about it, was that he was, you know, he was.
There's
his,
also one of those goals, he falls over,
tonight.
like slips. Like sometimes you do just slip.
I think he also did pick up a couple of reds as well in games against Liverpool. So he did, you know, in that sense.
He didn't like Liverpool.
Nah, he did not. But
although those Liverpool United games at that time, like, people forget like how good those games were.
Yeah, they were feisty, man.
They were epic.
I remember Paul Scholes getting a red card for going to punch Javi Alonso and missing. Violent conduct, no connection.
And is it Gerrard then getting sent off, 10 seconds after coming off the bench? A few years later, I think
that was his last ever derby.
Yeah. But those Man United-Liverpool derbies, even though Man United were better than Liverpool so much in the previous 10, 15 years, I think those Man United...
They're always close.
The class of 92 game, the class of 92 hated Liverpool so much more. I mean, you watch Gary Neville's Soccer Box, they all talk about it. That was their big game. And it still... in that late noughties with Alonso, Mascherano, Gerrard, Torres, Liverpool were at a very good side, and they were epic games. That was kind of peak Premier League rivalries.
It really was. I think it was as close as United and Liverpool came to being at the same level. Either side of that, United were always good and Liverpool weren't so good. Obviously now, Liverpool are great. And
it's probably
United
second to United Arsenal in the late 90s as like all-time Premier League rivalries, I think.
Yeah,
maybe United Chelsea as well.
I think Liverpool Man City as well. To be honest, last few years in terms of the actual quality level we're going for.
Bite for me.
There's not enough bite. There's not enough. If we're talking about bite, I'm thinking pure quality. I know. Yeah, Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola like each other far too much. Okay,
in public.
I wonder. Yeah, true. Okay, that makes it sound like we know something.
No, we don't know anything.
Other people don't. But who knows? All right, I wonder where to go next. I might just do I just complete my defence here? Do I just complete my defence? I might do, to be honest. I might do. There are a lot of good other options here. I was thinking like Aymeric Laporte going to Man City. Martin Skrtel and Daniel Agger both signed in January as well. We wanted to make it a Liverpool back line. Kolo Touré went to Arsenal in January in 2002. But I am going to go for... Sorry, I'm just kind of giving you options here.
Didn't have any of these on my list.
I was thinking Laporte, but then quite a lot of money, ended up being sold at a loss, and also
season out injured as well.
Yeah, and
was he
he was out for pretty much a whole season, and. Yeah, had an amazing, was one of the best centre-backs in the world, maybe the best centre-back in the world at one point. But yeah,
18,
just the longevity just wasn't quite there. So I've gone for Andrea Barzagli at Juventus. January 2011, €300,000 he cost from Wolfsburg. 300,000 euros. Wins the Scudetto in all of his 8 full seasons at the club. He leaves, in 2019 maybe?
First to go, wasn't he? The 3.
First to go of the 3, although Bonucci left and then came back. But yeah, obviously formed a part of one of the greatest back threes of all time with Bonucci and Chiellini. Obviously makes 2 Champions League finals. But yeah, he comes in, I think, 6 months before Antonio Conte is hired by the club. At a time when Juventus are still recovering from the Calciopoli scandal, still building themselves back up in Serie A. Do they finish 7th in 2010-11?
Yeah.
I think they might do, or at least they finished
I remember the year before Conte, they finished seventh.
They finished seventh. So he was part of this rebuild project where, Juventus were kind of trying to find their identity again. They were about to move into a new stadium as well. To get Barzagli at that price, just a year after they got Bonucci through the door as well, Chiellini, of course, was already there, very quickly formed that partnership with them. Yeah, one of the best defences in Europe for a number of years. They obviously go unbeaten, do they, in their first season under Conte? I can't really look past him. I know he's not playing in a back three in this team. He is playing in a back two with Virgil van Dijk, but I think
Van Dijk can cover for him.
I think
Plus
Van Dijk, he's the kind of brawn to Van Dijk's.
Chiellini was always the guy in the middle, wasn't he? So he was always the wider centre back.
Yeah, he was.
I think.
Just a brilliant player, and I think his ball playing ability as well was quite underrated. Andrea Barzagli. I just think at that price, the service that Juve got out of him, and it kind of looking back, it feels inevitable that Juve were that dominant in Italian football, but they weren't. They really weren't. They built that team off very, very good, very, very smart transfer business. They didn't necessarily have the funds.
Still recovering from the scandal.
Yeah, they didn't have the funds that other top clubs in Europe like Bayern and Barcelona and Real Madrid and the Premier League clubs had, and they were still able to get to two Champions League finals. So I think he embodied that rebuild that was so successful for Juve.
Shout out Max Allegri for his work this season as well.
Yeah,
doing really, really good stuff there. Right, I'm going to complete my forward line. Actually.
Okay,
so I've
nice.
got Haaland and Memphis Depay.
Who have you got on the right?
In front of Bruno Fernandes, I've got Riyad Mahrez.
Ooh.
Did you want this one?
No, this completely...
It's another Barzagli-esque one.
Yeah.
Real bargain, guys. £450,000 he cost Leicester City from Le Havre on the 11th of January 2014.
This was when they were still in the Championship, right?
Yes, I believe so. And he'd scored 2 goals in 17 league games for Le Havre up until that point in January in Ligue 2. So it's not like they, it was if someone did amazing scouting work. I actually remember reading the article of who it was, but I can't remember the name, so I'm not going to try and guess. But anyway, 5 years at Leicester, 48 goals, 38 assists, leaves for a huge fee for Man City. But obviously, you can't talk about Mahrez and just not talk about that 15-16 season, that title-winning season. He was just unbelievable. They don't win the title probably without Kante. They don't win it without Vardy. But they definitely don't win it without Mahrez either. They absolutely don't. 17 goals and 10 assists. Goals in big games as well. Spurs, Chelsea, Man City. And Chelsea and Man City were the sides back then as well. So really, really impressive. PFA Fans Player of the Year, PFA Player of the Year. Just absolutely electric to watch. And given the fact that a few years before, no one knew who he was. No one was that. He's playing in Ligue 2 in France for Le Havre, who do have a reputation for an amazing academy, but have never done really anything that special in Ligue 1 for quite a while. I think it was just one of my favourite transfers of all time. Flair, goals, technical ability. Everything that he showed at Man City, he was already doing at Leicester. And I did think he became slightly more clinical at Man City at points and a bit more of a team player. But in terms of entertainment as well, Mahrez had it all at Leicester. I thought he was such a good player and just part of the greatest story that the Premier League will probably ever see. I just absolutely loved it. So Mahrez completes my front three on the right.
I love that. Mahrez just did not. I just didn't even think to look at Leicester's business. That was a real blind spot from me there. But yeah, I'm really jealous of that. That's the first pick I'm really genuinely very jealous of. Haaland, was it Memphis?
Mahrez,
Memphis,
Haaland and Memphis.
Okay, cool.
Flair and goal scoring.
That's a really difficult forward line to match up to.
Have Suarez.
I've got Suarez. That's all I've got so far. We need to I think we need to rifle through these a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go then. You know what? I'll do my right wing spot as well. I thought I was gonna win the battle here in terms of impact. I went for Sebastian Giovinco to Toronto from Juventus in 2015 on a free. My other option was Kulusevski to Spurs, but that's a bit boring. MLS MVP in his first season, breaks the record for most goals and assists in a season in his first season. Finishes 2015 as the top scorer and top assister in the MLS. Makes the MLS 11 3 seasons in a row. makes the MLS Cup final in 2016, wins it in 2017, first in Toronto history. There you go, Sebastian Giovinco, one of the maybe the greatest MLS signing of all time.
Fair enough.
So that's all I'm going for.
Worthy of a mention.
Worthy of a mention.
I'm quite surprised you didn't mention Jared Bowen for West Ham.
Bowen, yeah, I didn't. Again, I like in my research, I just did, I was going.
You went
through,
MLS. I also like to give a good shout out for the MLS. It's nice to talk about someone different.
Yeah, nice to be a bit more.
Okay,
obscure.
Suarez is doing a lot of legwork up there.
He is doing a lot of leg. Oh, mate, don't underestimate Giovinco. He went there in his prime. So yeah, I'm going for him on the right wing. I also just didn't consider Jared Bowen. There were just a few clubs who I didn't look at, West Ham and Leicester being two of them. So yeah, that was an oversight from me there.
Fair enough.
Where are you going next, Dukes?
Right, I'm going to go for my defensive midfielder now. I think there's quite a few good choices, actually. I've gone for very much a deal signing rather than playing for the club. I've gone for Moses Caicedo to Brighton.
Ooh, okay.
From Independiente de la Valle. De la Valle? I think that's how you pronounce it. The Ecuadorian side. £4.7 million, I think he was. And
United wanted him at the time.
United wanted him at the time. Loaned out to Beerschot. Was only recalled in January 2022 because there was an injury crisis in midfield. Played a season and a half at Brighton. Looked good, obviously, but sold for a British record £115 million. Brighton kind of completed football with that deal.
Can't complain with that, can you?
I mean, what's that? After 45 or so Premier League games, they make a £111 million profit. I mean, as a signing, it doesn't really get much better, and he was very good for Brighton when he played for them as well. Now struggling somewhat in a Chelsea side, or at least not justifying that fee just yet. Don't want to be too harsh on him. I've said it all season, but I think he's been underwhelming. Chelsea fans, some of them disagree. I'm going to give him time, but at the same time, for Brighton to scout that player, develop him so much that not just Chelsea wanted him, Liverpool were prepared to pay over £100 million for him as well. Just shows what a good job they did for him, and hyping him in a system that really showed the best of him last year. And yeah, he struggled without Brighton, but yeah, as a deal, I don't think it can really be topped.
Yeah, and he was massive for them last year as well, wasn't he? Or for 2 years. That's hard to argue with from a business standpoint. I think there's lots of good CDMs in here. I was thinking about Javier Mascherano at Liverpool, but he actually got sold at a slight loss to Barcelona in the end, and was amazing in that side. But my team is very Liverpool heavy at the moment, and I think I've gone for someone more impact at the club. Also a great deal as well, but more for their impact at the club. A defensive midfield, Marcelo Brozovic to Inter Milan from Dinamo Zagreb in 2015.
Is he a January one?
He was a €3 million loan fee with option to buy. I think he's a modern Inter legend, isn't he? Interestingly, Mateo Kovacic had been signed by Inter 2 years previously in January as well. So this was kind of a period of quite good kind of transfer relations between Inter and Dinamo Zagreb. Obviously, Kovacic ended up going to Real Madrid as well, and where he underwhelmed, and then kind of found his best form again at Chelsea. But Brozovic, from the word go, really, really important player at Inter. Marked himself out during a difficult period for Inter as well, as one of the best deep-lying playmakers in world football. 330 appearances for them in the end, 31 goals, won Serie A, of course, in 2021. He kind of bridged that gap. He was part of that rebuild. At a time, like I said, Inter had been out of the Champions League for a while, going through some interesting managers, the likes of Spalletti, but they didn't really mark themselves out as the main challenger to Juve really until kind of Napoli started dropping off towards the end of the 2010s. Captained them in the end in the Champions League final last year. That was his final appearance for the club, and it came during a time where kind of sadly actually Hakan Çalhanoğlu was starting to take precedence over him in that position. And of course Çalhanoğlu has really come into his own this year, and I think under Simone Inzaghi, maybe Brozovic was declining a little bit, and maybe he just wasn't Inzaghi's man as much as he had been for previous managers at Inter. But his record is brilliant. 2 Coppas Italia in there as well for Internazionale. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
Love the full name,
And also he was so loyal to them as well. There was lots of talk about Man United wanting him, other top clubs wanting him over the years, and he was always very committed to Inter during that time before eventually leaving. So yeah, I think 8 years there in the end, or 7.5 years there in the end. Marcelo Brozovic.
It's a great shout. I saw he actually got 2 nominations, I think, by Roberto Mancini and Roberto Martinez for FIFA's Best Player of the Year 2023.
What?
Over Haaland and Messi.
Really?
Absolutely mad.
That is, yeah.
And I think Lyle Taylor of Montserrat voted for Declan Rice. Some people just shouldn't be allowed to vote.
Was that just because he was Inter captain in that final or something?
I've got absolutely no idea. Absolutely no idea. Absolutely bonkers, those FIFA Best Awards. Anyway, right, I'm going to complete my midfield. So I've got Bruno Fernandes, I've got Moses Caicedo, and I'm looking for one more sort of attacking 8. I'm weighing up. I did think long and hard about Dele Alli for Spurs from NK Dons, but I think the end of his time there didn't end well. I'm actually going to go... I thought about Dominic Szoboszlai as well for Leipzig.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm actually going to go with Martin Odegaard at Arsenal. Initially signed on loan from Real Madrid, had a difficult spell in the final 6 months at Real Madrid, didn't really get a look in after that really excellent season at Real Sociedad the year before, linking up so well with Alexander Isak. I actually saw their highlights together the other day. What a duo that was in that season. That's the year that Isak, I think, scored 16 La Liga goals. But Odegaard, for Arsenal, slowish start in his first 6 months, but his next 2 full years were absolutely exceptional. I know he's taken a dip this year, but I think it shouldn't go unnoticed like what he did last year. 23 goals and assists in 45 games in all competitions in 22-23. And without the signing of Odegaard going as well as it has, I think Arsenal aren't in contention.
Definitely not.
Like, as good as Saka is, I think it needed another player to be of that, almost of that level, almost just below that world-class category. I think Saka's probably closer to world-class than Odegaard, but Odegaard, I think, will get there one day. And everyone has a different definition of that. For me, world-class is top 5 players in your position in the world, probably. And Odegaard's maybe just below that, but that shouldn't go underestimated. Like, his weight of pass, his understanding of where to be, his manipulation of space, I think is already at that level. He just needs to be more consistent. And at the start of this season, he's had a dip. He was actually better around Christmas period, but he needs a big second half of the season because Arsenal really need him because, at the moment they're in a top 4 race because it is incredibly tight, and they should be in tighter contention, especially with Man City having a drop-off up until now. So I think Odegaard couldn't really have done much better. Aside from that first 3 months of this season, I think he's been absolutely exceptional. So, yeah, he completes my midfield. So I've got Moses Caicedo, Bruno Fernandes, Odegaard behind Depay, Haaland and Mahrez.
Gosh, okay. I've got some work to do here. I've got to pick I think I've got to pick my cam, and I've got to pick my striker as well, and then I've got to pick a left back and a right back, and then I think I'm done. All right, I may as well go for my attacking midfielder as well. Oh, I say I don't want to be too Liverpool heavy, but I think I do need to bring in another big hitter here, and I think I'm going to go for Philippe Coutinho to Liverpool.
Nice.
13 million euros from Inter in 2013, sold for 135 million euros 5 years later.
Covers the sort of ability side and the deal side, doesn't it?
Yeah, it covers both. I think, in 2013-14, I think he's, talk a lot about SAS. Coutinho was a massively important part of that side that almost won the title. That goal, that winning goal against Man City in that 3-2, just before they messed it up against Chelsea, the Gerrard slip, will live long in the memory. I was living in Liverpool at the time. I remember watching it on a friend's laptop in a living room, which is how I watched pretty much all my football back then. That just lives long in the memory. Just in general, Philippe Coutinho was, for that price, even at that time, I think was, really exceptional for Brendan Rodgers. His set piece delivery, his ability to score from set pieces, ability to score from range was brilliant. And I think just generally speaking, the money that they got for him in the end from Barcelona, then funded Van Dijk and Alisson, as alluded to earlier. So Philippe Coutinho for me in that position. Dukes, where are you going next?
Nice. Yeah, I will up the pace as well. Right back. I was really tempted to go. Actually, I won't say that in case you go. I was tempted to go with Jeremy Frimpong.
Okay.
Celtic to Bayer Leverkusen. But I'm actually going to go with Kieran Trippier.
Okay.
Nice. You know, I take a lot of flack from Newcastle fans these days who think I'm sort of public enemy number one. I don't actually hate Newcastle. It's just fun to wind them up from.
I mean, you do hate Newcastle. Let's start.
A position of championship mediocrity. No, I don't, because I didn't grow up in the area. I don't hate them in the same way that I should. But, you know, if you're going to respect any Newcastle signings over the last 3 years, you pick out Bruno Guimaraes, signed in January, was tempted to include him here,
too. And
Kieran Trippier, who, similar to Odegaard, except for this slight drop-off in form this year, has been pretty faultless. You know, he arrived in, January 2022, sorry. He broke his foot that February. But from the start of the next season, so the start of last season, and last season, he was right up there in Europe in terms of creativity. I think only Bruno Fernandes created more chances than him. His progressive passes were right up there, his passes into the final third. He was arguably the outstanding right back in Europe last year, at a time where, you know, Trent wasn't probably as exceptional as he's been so far this year. Reece James was injured, Hakimi, etc. were, you know, up and down in terms of form. But Trippier was absolutely brilliant at the age of he's now 33, so at the age of 32. I think he's been, absolutely sensational for Newcastle. I don't think they do get into the Champions League last year without him. I don't think they are, you know, considered a growing force without Kieran Trippier coming in and performing as well as he did almost instantly when he was fit. So I think he's a really solid pick for right back.
Yeah, strong choice. I guess I better go for right back as well, mate. Jeremy Frimpong, also an oversight from me. I had originally picked Branislav Ivanovic.
Solid.
You know what? I'll stick with Branislav Ivanovic. I think Jeremy Frimpong could prove to be the best. You know, the level that he's shown over the last 2 years is absolutely frightening. And if he doesn't garner huge success at Leverkusen, then he will definitely garner them a huge profit in the transfer market wherever he goes next. I was also thinking, if we're going to go for deals, by the way, Seamus Coleman, 70k from Sligo Rovers to Everton in 2009. And I mean, what a servant.
When you type in
he's
best
still
January
there.
deals, that's the one that always comes up on Google.
mean,
understandably.
I mean, he's still playing for the club in 2024, so
mad.
That is pretty. But I just I think that's hard to argue with. But I think I'll go with Branislav Ivanovic. Heard Sam Abasaki talking about him as one of his favourite January signings ever on Sky Sports News the other day, and he, you know, made a good point. You know, he scored the winner in the Europa League final. Was a pretty good goal threat actually from right back, and also a really, really tough right back to get past. You know, he was a real versatile player, very tough. I mean, he's someone who now would, you know, who would be able to switch between a back three and a back four very, very easily. Would probably do a job as a wing back as well. 2008 to 2017, 377 appearances. You know, won the Champions League with Chelsea. Won multiple league titles with them under various managers. Going to go for him at right back, and I know that almost completes my.
I've got two picks and you've got one, I think.
Yeah. Do you want to go for...
I've got my second centre back. I thought about Ivanovic as well, but I thought about Gary Cahill, Bolton to Chelsea as well. But I'm actually going with John Stones, Barnsley to Everton. Again, a real good deal one.
Loving the deals.
I love a deal. Signed for £3 million in January 2013. Obviously sold for close to £50 million. I think when he was sold, he was actually the second most expensive defender of all time, behind David Luiz, who'd gone from Chelsea to PSG, or PSG back. I can't remember which one's the particularly big one, but John Stones was awesome for Everton. Did have the odd mistake in him as he was sort of learning his trade, and that sort of style of play hadn't really been seen that often in the Premier League by a centre-back as well. That's certainly not an English centre-back, but not an English centre-back for sure. I mean, he was nominated for the Golden Boy Award in 2014 in his first full season there. Then the following summer, Everton rejected 3 bids, I think, from Chelsea. I mean, what a potentially era-defining signing that could have been for Chelsea. Really carried them through. Although Chelsea did obviously have that really good spell under Mourinho and then Conte, of course, as well. I think for Everton, you know, he wasn't the player that he is at Man City, but there were signs that he was going to become it. And it's a shame what's happened to John Stones in a way. Like his injury issues have held him back. But whenever he's on the pitch, I think he's an awesome player to watch. I absolutely love him.
Yeah, I mean, made the FIFA World 11, didn't he? The kind of one real standout centre-back, well, along with Ruben Diaz, in that kind of weird back three that they decided to employ with Kyle Walker. But yeah, I mean, I think now it feels like John Stones really is getting that kind of international recognition that he probably has deserved for, probably since kind of 2017,
Especially
2018.
International tournaments have been pretty much faultless.
Always faultless, yeah. Always brilliant. Yeah, and that that's a big plus as well, the fact that his partnership with Harry Maguire for England. Okay, so I've done my centre-backs already. I might as well move to left-back then and get that crossed off the list. Patrice Evra I was very tempted by, but a year later, a certain Brazilian by the name of Marcelo moved to Real Madrid in January 2017. Similarly to the Alphonso Davies one, actually, the deal was basically done the previous summer, but Marcelo was not actually a Real Madrid player until January 2007. Made his debut very quickly. I think took a little bit of... Well, I was kind of reading up on it, actually, when Marcelo first went to Real Madrid. I think it might have been Bernd Schuster was the manager at the time. And, yeah, Marcelo initially kind of struggled a bit. And then about a kind of year in was starting to settle in a little bit more, because he was, I think he was basically told to rein in the attacking play and become more of a defensive left back. And so for a while he kind of had to, abandon his attacking instincts. And it wasn't really until kind of under Mourinho, was it, that he really came into his own, and he was incredibly young when he first moved to Real Madrid. Let's remember, that's no shame as a left back, but to go on to become one of the greatest attacking left backs of all time. I mean, I haven't got how many trophies he won at Real Madrid written down
Who
here.
needs it?
But you'll know. I think, and if one performance is going to stand out for me, actually, I think that 2014 Champions League final when Angel Di Maria was an absolute beast, and I think was the man of the match in that final.
Yeah, he was.
Marcelo as well.
Afterwards.
Yeah, sold for big money to Man United, wasn't he? Less said about that, the better. But Marcelo in that final as well was also an absolute behemoth. Was absolutely brilliant. Was highly influential, I think, in many of Real Madrid's Champions League wins. I think 2017 as well en route was just brilliant. So yeah, Marcelo, 6.5 million euros from Fluminense that January, and also that January as well. They had a real field day with South American signings. Gonzalo Higuain signed from River Plate. Fernando Gago as well signed from Boca Juniors. That's a blast from the past. They both signed for considerably more than Marcelo. But I think Gago was signed for something like 20 million euros and never made it at Madrid. But anyway, so that's my left back.
That's one of the ones I'm really jealous of, actually.
The Marcelo one, yeah. I would be too.
Right, shall I wrap it up? Final one.
I need to do centre forward still, actually.
Oh.
But your final. Who's your final?
My final pick is goalkeeper.
Okay, yeah.
Trailed the internet for ages to find Mark Schwarzer.
Ooh,
moving to Middlesbrough.
Oi, that's a good one.
Actually signed in February. I think it was before the January transfer window was actually introduced. So it's a little bit of a cheat code from Bradford City. But yeah, 446 appearances for the club. Actually, at the time, was the most appearances for one club by a foreigner in Premier League history, beating Dennis Bergkamp for Arsenal. Was awesome for Middlesbrough. Well, I mean, he was just a very solid Premier League goalkeeper. That noughties period with like Brad Friedel, Paul Robinson, there was just some great goalkeepers.
There were some great goalkeepers in the mid-tables clubs. Yeah. They're all still kind of Premier League
David James as well, just sort of bumbling around the mid-table.
And then when Schwarzer went to Fulham, was that when Fulham made the Europa League final?
Yeah. I mean, he played 10 consecutive seasons of Premier League football with Middlesbrough, then played another 5 with Fulham, and was awesome at Fulham as well. And yeah, he's now a Bundesliga commentator. I actually heard him the other day. Anyway, he's third on the Premier League all-time clean sheet list behind Cech and David James. Great guy, excellent goalkeeper. Loved him.
Great, that's a really strong choice, actually. That's a really strong choice.
Goalkeepers is difficult. But
I thought you were going to be scrambling with Dubravka there and I would win out. But actually, Gregory Coupe versus Schwarzer is a pretty tight battle,
yeah,
I would say.
Think maybe.
Sorry?
Closer than I thought when you said Coupe.
Yeah, absolutely. Just doesn't have the trophies, I guess, that Coupe had. But
did win the League Cup.
He did win the League Cup
and got Borough into the UEFA Cup.
Yeah. It's true.
Fair play.
It's true. Well, got them to the UEFA Cup final, didn't he?
This is true.
So yeah. Although I think they did leak quite a few goals there. I think it was Massimo Macaroni who got them through those comeback ties. Anyway, enough of my.
Do you want to also hear my other niche naughties one?
Okay.
Yakubu to Portsmouth.
Ooh.
From Maccabi Haifa.
Yeah. What 2001, 2002 or something
like that. 9 years there.
That's
scored a load of goals.
A great
anyway,
shout.
Niche.
That's very niche. That is very, very niche. I was also thinking, Jermaine Defoe to Sunderland in January 2016 or whenever it was.
That very disastrous return and gave up after about a month.
Oh, yeah. Well,
anyway.
That's all right. 15 Premier League goals, 2 seasons running for Sunderland. Not bad at all. Well, that does leave me with centre forward. And interestingly, I'm also going for a 90s signing. Ooh. Someone who did sign, actually. He actually did sign for Man United in January 1995. Oh, yeah. But it was before the January window was a thing. But nevertheless, a January signing. Andy Cole to Man United, £7 million, 1995. Came from Newcastle, who at the time I guess were not necessarily. It was Man United v Blackburn that season. That was the real title rivalry. But came from a future, their main title rivals from the following year. Obviously, Newcastle go on to sign Shearer with that money that summer, but nevertheless, Andy Cole goes on to, win the treble with Man United, form that famous partnership with Dwight Yorke. Never scored as many goals in a season for United as he did for Newcastle. I think did he get something like 33, 34 in 34 game season in 1994, I believe. But was still, a brilliant striker for Man United. He's in my forward line. I was thinking about Julian Alvarez. I was thinking about Gabby Jesus. I was thinking about Jermaine Defoe as well. And Yakubu, who's a great shout as well. But Andy Cole finishes off my team. So let's run them through. So
go for yours.
Yeah, I'll go. So Gregory Coupe in goal. Branislav Ivanovic right back. Virgil van Dijk and Andrea Barzagli as the centre backs. Marcelo at left back. CDM, Marcelo Brozovic. In front of him, Wesley Sneijder. In front of him, Felipe Coutinho. In the forward line, Sebastian Giovinco, Andy Cole, and Luis Suarez. That forward line is absolutely rogue. But I quite like. I think Luis Suarez and Andy Cole would dovetail quite nicely actually in their prime.
Love it.
Dougie, go on.
Mine is less niche, I think. Mark Schwarzer in goal. Kieran Trippier, Vidic and John Stones, which could be a lovely pairing.
That's a great pairing.
Left back, Alphonso Davies. DM, Moses Caicedo. Midfield, Bruno Fernandes and Odegaard. Right wing, Mahrez. Centre forward, Haaland at Dortmund and Depay at Lyon.
That's a lovely forward line. And a lovely
Guys,
midfield as well.
In the comments, but come on.
I think my back line wins it. I think your midfield and forward line edge it.
The forward line, Sebastian Giovinco.
He was great
I never
at Toronto.
thought he was going to come up.
He was great at Toronto. What can I say? I was struggling for wingers. But yeah, let us know who you think's got the best team in the comments below. And thanks for watching this bumper episode of Sunday Vibes. If you've made it to the end, I really enjoyed that, Diggs. I don't know about you.
I think it was one of my favourite Football Daily videos I've done in years.
Oh, wow.
I really enjoyed it.
That's really saying something. That is saying something. Yeah, likewise. I do love a challenge. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and we will see you on Monday.
We will.
We will see you on Monday. Have a good weekend. Or have a good Sunday.